a difficult question to ask. There's lots of other things. There has been mention about the Justice and Security Bill. Why would the government be so adamant about passing such a ridiculous law that really undoes the whole point of having courts in the first place by using secret justice that you cannot use in the first place and you cannot rely on? Why would it be so important if they had nothing to hide? You know, if you're not creating problems, you have no reason to cover them up and hide them by using the law. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways in which Britain is involved. It's 10 years of the war in Iraq. And one of the things that came out in Iraq, and then it very much led into Guantanamo Bay, was the prisoner abuse that took place in Abu Ghraib. 1 year after that came out, it was then found out, once information started coming out of Guantanamo Bay, that those same techniques used in Iraq had first been used against prisoners in Bagram and in Guantanamo Bay. And then the great thing was, again, this is where Britain is really fantastic on these things, is that these were the same things that they were doing in Northern Ireland back in the 1960s and 1970s. Those 5 techniques, the hooding, the sleep deprivation, the white noise, all of those things happened to Irish Republican prisoners in the 1960s and 1970s. In fact, in the Baha Musa inquiry, one of the big questions that the judge asked, and in fact they actually asked a lot of serving British soldiers, is that how is it that these techniques that were banned back in the 1970s were being used again in Iraq? What happened that 40 years later, the vast majority of soldiers had no idea what people were talking about when they were talking about hooding prisoners? Because why should they? It's not something that the British Army should be doing. It shouldn't be torturing and abusing prisoners. But it was a question that was asked, how did this come back? Where did it come from? So those are questions that are very much need to be put to the British government. Maybe we cannot put so much pressure on President Obama, but what about questions that we should be asking of our own government? And so the question is, what can you do? As we've heard, there is the petition at the back, and I hope that nobody will leave this room without having signed it. And I hope that when you do leave this room, you go home and tell your friends about it and your family about it and just about everyone. You know, I'm sure a lot of people here are probably just right now underneath the desk, you know, tweeting and on Facebook and things like that. So if you are, please send out a message to your friends and your family and whoever else you have on social media or whatever you're WhatsApping or whatever to sign the petition. The other thing that's happening is on Saturday there is a whole day's worth of action in Tooting. Tooting is in South London, just in case for anyone who's not from town, and that is very close to where Shakarama lived. He lived in Battersea and his family still lives in Battersea. So there will be a whole day's worth of action. I understand that people will be meeting outside Tooting Mosque at around 12 o'clock, and from 12 to 5 there will be a day-long action to collect signatures on this petition. What does this petition do? It's one of those great e-petitions to the Prime Minister. If you get 100,000 signatures on it, which are needed by the 20th of April, that will then trigger a debate on Parliament. So that question of why isn't Shakarama here is one of the questions that the MPs will be able to ask to ask the Prime Minister and ask the Foreign Secretary in Parliament. I don't know if we'll get an answer, but this is a good way of finding out if we will. The other thing is that it was said here that, I think it was Victoria said that, you know, we never thought that Guantanamo would still be open. Trust me, we did not think Guantanamo would still be open. We've been holding a demonstration outside the US Embassy on a monthly basis for the last 6 years. We sort of had the idea back in 2008 that Guantanamo might close at the beginning of 2010. It didn't happen. And we said that we were inspired by Brian Hall's action in Parliament Square, and we decided that we would hold a regular presence outside the United States Embassy until they closed Guantanamo. It's a solidarity action. It's something that we do to remind the US Embassy, to remind the people walking past and walking in and working there that people do know what's going on. They don't have to put it in the newspapers. They can bury it wherever they like. But we do know, and we won't forget what's going on over there. So if you do have the time, it's on a Thursday at lunchtime from 12 to 1. Please join us. The first Thursday of every month, we hold a demonstration outside the US Embassy. And as I said, tweet it to your friends, let people know what's going on, find out what's happening, and things like that as well. on Sunday, we actually held a protest. I know that in the United States they're holding a protest later on today, and they're holding a day of action in various cities on Sunday as well. But we held a demonstration. It was cold, it was rainy, about 30 people turned out to show solidarity with the prisoners on hunger strike. And solidarity is incredibly important, and it's incredibly powerful as well. It's a very small thing, because if you think about it, it's a shame on us that the men in Guantanamo Bay are on hunger strike. It's a shame that they have to use their bodies to protest when we have voices that people can hear, when we can write letters to our politicians. You don't have to chain yourself to the gates of Downing Street or anything like that. There are simpler things that you can do, ways of raising awareness. So please do something. And I know it's very simple for people to think, oh well, there's not lots of people here today, and oh, nobody really cares about the issue. But just in drawing all of these points together, what's happening in Afghanistan, 10 years of the war in Iraq, and Guantanamo Bay, there is one man who has done, a rather young man as well, who's done an incredible lot to raise awareness. 10 years ago, he marched against the war in Iraq, and right now he's on trial in the United States, and thanks to him, a lot of documents have apparently been released about Guantanamo Bay, and his name is Bradley Manning. And he's just the one individual, and again, a lot of people in this country don't know that Bradley Manning also happens to be a British citizen as well as an American, and just the one person has made such huge ripples just by doing something, kind of not really that apparent. Nobody would really think, oh, whoops, I've sent the wrong email to the wrong person, and next thing you know, you've got WikiLeaks going on. So the thing is that, it's not the size of things, it's not the size of the gesture, it's not the thousands of millions of people or anything like that. It's just the little things that you do, they all add up eventually. So the thing is, find out about it and then do something about it. Thank you. Oh, just one other thing. When we do open up to discussion, I think, as I said, it's about taking action. So perhaps people could suggest things that they could do or would be interested in doing and things like that. Thank you.
I'm just going to reiterate a point that Aisha made, and I've made it before, about the petition. Shaka Arma's petition is a peaceful way of addressing, the case. He has been incarcerated for 11 years, no charge, no trial. Please do sign the petition today. It's vital, that we get signatures. Unfortunately, we haven't even reached halfway mark. We are going to open the floor to questions now, so if anybody has any questions for the panel.
Oh, if nobody else is going to say anything, I'll say something. Thank you. All the Muslims I know are, without exception, some of the most charming, generous, tolerant, reasonable people I've ever met. And what's not, I think, widely enough understood is that throughout the verses of the Quran, what is stressed most is being charitable and considerate to other people. And that's what got Shaka Arma to Afghanistan to build a school with Mozambique. The Americans later bombed it. And that's what's got him into trouble in Guantanamo, because he speaks up. He says, that's not a fair way to treat my brother. That's not reasonable treatment. And that's taken subversion. And he spent years in solitary confinement as a result. And could I just say that signing the petition is not just important for us, but it's very important for the family, because they are voiceless. The British government is not listening. This is the only way that they can be heard. So if you will please sign the petition before you go. And Muslims, you're lovely. And please stay that way. You've been treated absolutely unspeakably in Guantanamo, but you're on the right side. George Bush is wrong. And George Bush is wrong in saying that you despise our freedoms and want to destroy them. Please exercise your freedoms. Exercise your freedoms on Saturday. Join us in Tooting and sign the petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Noel. I've always admired your work, Noel, as part of London Guantanamo campaign. Just to reiterate, and it's so important to just get the facts right, no charge, no trial, 11 years incarcerated. cleared under the Bush and Obama administration. There is no reason as to why Shaka Arma cannot return back to Britain tomorrow. And like I said, unfortunately, we haven't even reached the halfway mark with regards to this petition. Is there any other questions that people have regarding our meeting today? I want to open up the floor to discussions, points. Yes, please.
I'd like to know how effective would it be to sign a petition, because the Muslim community, I think a year ago, got together and they signed a petition for a man called Baba Ahmed. And Baba Ahmed was a Muslim, a British-born Muslim who had been held in Belmarsh, I believe, for over 8 years without trial. The Muslim community came together, we petitioned. I believe we raised over 100,000 signatures on the Prime Minister's petition website. And I believe prior to that, the Prime Minister or someone in the government had said that if you can get 100,000 signatures, that will prompt or trigger a debate in the House of Commons. That debate never took place. And the debate had actually taken place, I believe, in Westminster Hall. I attended the debate that had taken place in one of the lobby rooms. And that just shows to us the significance of Muslim citizens in this country. The fact that we, who are tax-paying citizens, are treated with so much contempt that when our lives are put on the line, the only way we can have our voice heard is in the lobbies or one of those rooms in the House of Parliament, but not in the chambers where people such as Gary McKinnon did have his voice heard. And I'm sorry to say that as an Asian Muslim man in this country, my life is seen as insignificant compared to a British-born Englishman.
Thank you very much for your comment. We're just going to have Asim Qureshi first respond to that. Thank you.
Okay, I've got two responses. One is secular and one is as a Muslim. So my first response, which is far more secular, should we say, comes from Barber. It doesn't come from me. Now what Barber basically said to us after the e-petition was completed and before he got sent, I was able to speak to him one last time before he was shipped off to the US, was he felt that the e-petition had succeeded. And the way that he felt it succeeded is because he was sure that they would change the law after they left. And he felt that they would change the law because of the momentum the e-petition had. So, for those people who say it didn't work, for those guys who were most affected and who had most to lose from the e-petition, they felt it did. They felt the solidarity, for a start. And secondly, they felt that it actually did achieve something tangible. If not for them, then for those who were going to come after them. And I think that's a very, very important thing to bear in mind. Now, as a Muslim, quite frankly, it does not matter whether or not it succeeds. Okay, as Muslims, we believe in a statement, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah," which means that there's no power other than that which is with God. And basically, what that teaches us is that if the power to actually change something is only with God, then what is your role in relation to all of this? Your role is to do as much as you can, because you as an individual are accountable. The change is not for you to make. God makes the change. All you're accountable is for when you stand before God and God asks you what were you able to do, then you have to have an answer to that. And so if that means that you sign a petition, then you sign that petition. If it means you write a letter, you write that letter. If it means you stand, like Aisha does so often, out in the rain, in the cold, knowing that more than likely the people inside that building do not give a damn about whether or not you are freezing your socks off, then you do that. And this is the point, at least for us as Muslims, that we come back to every single time. These people have a right upon us, these people are in prison. And we have to fulfill that obligation in any way that we can. So as many petitions come our way, we sign them. Because at the end of the day, it's a very, very small thing to do. So I want you to marry those two positions up, which is all of us, whether you're Muslim or not Muslim, you do what you can, as much as you can, as far as you can, and as for as long as you can. And you keep on doing that in the hope that something changes. And if nothing changes, then at least you knew you did everything that you could, and most importantly, that those who are actually affected, those who actually have had their lives ripped apart, they knew you did everything you could. And that is something that you can never, ever, ever take away from them, because that means more to them than anything else. Hope that answers your question to some extent. I'm sure Victoria has some more important points.
Well, I just want to say on this issue that in the period between April, when they lost, first of all, in the European Court, and the end of July, I was involved in many demonstrations outside Downing Street, many meetings in the House of Commons. And it happened again and again that young Muslim men like you would come up to me afterwards and say, you know, we did everything you told us and it's been completely unsuccessful. I'm not coming to any more meetings in the House of Commons. I think this channel that you told me I was supposed to work on is completely useless. And one of the demonstrations we had outside Downing Street, I asked to come up on the platform. I don't know if you were at that one. It was outside 10 Downing Street. The young man who had most hassled me on this issue, in that he had spent, as he said, weekend after weekend getting people to sign that petition. And his disillusion was so deep. And although I wouldn't put it in the same way that Asim has put it, I asked him to come up on the platform with the trade union leaders and the 2 members of parliament we managed, just to say, you know, everything that you've done is worth doing, because we never know what is going to be the result. But there were some very specific issues around Barber's case, and again, I've written about the mothers of both Barber and Talha in this book. I think there was a very specific thing that the MP for their area betrayed them, in my view. He could have done so much more, and he made a personal political calculation that, and I actually heard him once say in Parliament, let us park at the door the idea this is a Muslim issue. All these, Gary McKinnon, Richard, whatever he was called, and Barbara and Talha, it's all the same. And then he left the chamber. And I had to say afterwards, I hate to criticise somebody when they're not present, but this is not correct. This is a Muslim issue. And I didn't go on to say this, but I'm saying it to you. The fact that Muslims in power did not respond is something that you, as a young Muslim, is extremely disillusioning. But there is a channel for you to hassle that particular individual. And I would suggest that is definitely not a waste of your time. Letters to that MP about your disillusion with the parliamentary system, I think, is a very important gesture that you and your friends can make.
Thank you very much. We have a comment here or a question? Yep, you. Yeah.
So I have a comment and a question. I wonder, there's been a lot of talk about the Justice and Security Bill, and I wonder, once that passes as an act, whether that's an opportunity for Shakarama to come home. Presumably he has a case against the government, and this is a way of concealing it from the public. My question is about support from MPs, because I understand the Foreign Office are being very cagey about exactly why Shaka can't come home. But I wonder whether, I mean, I know Caroline Lucas has spoken a lot about this, but I wonder if you can give an indication of what sort of support there is from MPs who we should be targeting, obviously the MPs in our own constituency, but whether there are others as well.
Security Justice, I can take.
Target all of them. I would like to tell you, we have had more personal letters written to all these Prime Ministers, Blair, Brown, this one, and to their wives. We have had delegations of prominent women going to Downing Street to talk about this issue. The lawyers who work on Shaka's case, both in America and here, have had meetings with William Hague and with other MPs in an attempt to say, you know, why. And they always say, well, you know, we're doing all we possibly can. Frankly, I don't believe them. And for a while, I think we all gave them the benefit of the doubt. The only thing that we can do is to keep on doing everything. And the more we tell them that we don't believe them, that their performance is pathetic, and it's ordinary people saying that, I think that's what you have to do. There is no stone that we have not turned over in this issue. And very much more influential people than any of us here have gone on delegations to the United States. All kinds of things have been done. And we have to start embarrassing anybody we have a lever with. You have your own MP. You presumably have a trade union representative. All of these people have not done enough, otherwise he wouldn't still be there. So hassle them. You look as though you're kind of up for it, and get all your friends to do it with you.
In terms of the Security and Justice Bill, I very much believe that that's correct, that this would present an opportunity, but obviously, you know, however much I hate to say it, you know, we shouldn't sacrifice our campaigning against the Security and Justice Bill in the hope that that's going to bring Shaka back. You know, it would be unconscionable of us to work in that way. If the Security and Justice Bill comes through, then yes, that becomes another avenue for us to push for Shaka's return, but it shouldn't be the means to getting him back, unfortunately, and it's something that we have to campaign against individually.
Sorry, just on the Justice and the Security Bill, I'm just going to say something that Ken Clarke has had to say to lots of MPs many times in Parliament. It only affects a civil law, so the criminal law is not affected. So Shaka Rama actually also has a criminal case against the government, so that particular part of it won't be affected. The problem with a lot of those kind of criminal cases, however, is what ends up happening with them is they end up saying there's not enough evidence or there's not enough to bring a case, and then they end up being thrown out of, there's no investigation. The point about MPs is this: I don't know what areas people here live in, but you might have noticed that you see your MP just a little bit more in the local paper recently, and councillors have also started coming out the woodworks. The reason is, possibly at some point in the next 18 months, there's going to be that thing that Rousseau said where the British public, well, the English, had democracy once every 5 years, or we go and, you know, cast our vote. So there's an election coming up, and this is always a good time to get MPs to commit to things. Whether or not they actually do anything, that's completely different story, and we've already had examples of them not doing anything, but this is a good time to start raising the issue with them. And it's also worth not just writing to them, but perhaps getting 2 or 3 other people to actually go along to one of their surgeries and then talking to them about the issue as well. Just one thing about how little importance Guantanamo now has, including Shaka Rama's case, is that there actually used to be an all-party parliamentary group on Guantanamo Bay, but then the people who are running it, who are now mainly from one of the parties now in the government, decided that it wasn't such a big issue anymore since most people had come home. And so it kind of fizzled out, and we just have a handful of MPs who actually still realise that there's still a British resident in Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, I just want to say a word generally about, well, petitioning, but campaigning generally. You see, I mean, there's a legitimate debate to be had among activists in any campaign about what are the most effective forms of action. But I think at any one time, depending on the forces at your disposal, the numbers, the way in which the issue is being treated in the news. All these things can come into a legitimate debate about what we can do at any one particular time. But I think it's very, very important that we never say that doing nothing is better than doing something. It is always better to do something than to do nothing. You see, if you were to ask me how many petitions I've signed and how many I thought actually were going to be effective, I'd say close to zero. But I still sign every single one I can, and I'll tell you why. Because if I sign it, then people can never say nobody said anything about this. If we didn't sign those petitions, if there weren't 100,000 people on it, what they would say is, we were never told and nobody cares. Now those are two arguments that we've immediately deprived them on. Because we can say, you cannot say that, because you had a petition with 100,000 names on it, don't tell us you didn't hear about it, and don't tell us that large numbers of people don't care about this. So if nothing else happens with that petition, you've got your opponents on the defensive over that issue simply by signing a petition. So it's always, for me, it is always worth doing something rather than nothing, because doing something rather than nothing disables your opponent from saying that people don't care, don't want change, don't want anything said about this. So, I always sign those things, even though my faith in MPs' willingness to do very much about it is limited to about 5 people on the benches in the House of Commons. Of course, after that, you can say, should we do other things as well? Are there more effective things we can do? But it's not a zero-sum game. It isn't as if we're going to either sign a petition or burn down the Houses of Parliament, or whatever, or picket, or protest. We can sign the petition and do something else. So it's never a kind of, the only thing that you can do.
Thank you very much. I have a question here.
Well, more of a comment really. Contact your local MPs, but don't just go and see them at their surgery once a week. Tell your friends, Twitter them. Tell everyone to badger them on Twitter. Then you've not just got them once a week, and you're not going to get an appointment to go and see them. You're just going to Twitter them and just keep badgering them and badgering them and badgering them. And eventually, hopefully they'll listen.
Thank you very much. I believe we have a question or comment here.
Basically, SOS Stop the War, we're actually circulating some petitions, Stop the War petitions, initiatives that we've got going on right now. There's a No to Western Intervention in Syria petition that most of you have signed, which has been circulated, and also a Ground the Drones petition that's been circulated that's linked to the actual flyers in front of you. The protest outside the RAF base. If indeed any of you have signed a petition and want to actually go to the protest, there's a coach that's been arranged, so you can sign up for that here as well before you leave. And I just wanted to remind you guys, there's also a join the Stop the War, Birbeck Stop the War fill-in sheet going around, so if you want to do that and you want to stay filled in on what we're doing, SOAS and Birbeck Stop